Let's make this cute and lovely pair BUBU and DUDU dolls. These are made by using the similar pattern, but you just have to change the colors accordingly. So let's get started. Hey guys, welcome to DIYKraftZ. For this I'm using 4-ply 100% cotton yarn and a 2.5 mm crochet hook. However, you can use your favorite yarn and its suitable hook size. Before we start, please note this pattern is an advanced beginner pattern, so it will be in a normal pace. However, you can slow down the video in the YouTube playback settings. Let's begin with the head part by making a magic ring. Make chain 1 and let's start making the first row. Insert your hook into the center and make 6 single crochet stitches in the magic ring. That's 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Once all the 6 stitches are completed, pull the starting tail end to close the magic ring. This completes the first row with 6 single stitches. Now put your needle on the top of the first single stitch, and in that stitch we are going to start making the second row. Make 2 single crochet stitches on top of the first stitch. That is a single crochet increase, which means we will work 2 single stitches in the same stitch. And to mark the beginning of the second row, as soon as we have done the first single stitch, we are going to put a stitch marker to mark the beginning of the second row. And into the same stitch, insert your hook and make 1 more single crochet stitch, which makes a single stitch increase. That's 2 single stitches worked into the same stitch. Now in the next stitch, again we are going to make a single stitch increase. So in all the 6 stitches in the first row, we are going to make single stitch increases in the second row, which gives us total of 12 single crochet stitches by the end of the second row. We have to make single crochet increases in each and every stitch. And this completes the second row, and it should look like this. Now remove the stitch marker and let's start making the third row. We begin with 1 single crochet and put the stitch marker back to mark the beginning of the third row. And for the third row, the pattern is 1 single stitch and 1 increase. So we make 1 single stitch in the first stitch and we put a stitch marker. And now in the next stitch, we'll make a single crochet increase. That's 2 single stitches in the same stitch. So this 1 stitch and 1 increase together is 1 repetition. And now we have to repeat this pattern for a total of 6 times. First repetition is already completed and now we are making the second repetition. So 1 stitch and 1 increase. This is the second repetition. Likewise, repeat for 4 more times until you reach the starting point. Here I am making the last increase of the third row, and by the end of the third row, we will have 18 single crochet stitches. Now let's start making the fourth row. Remove the stitch marker. Begin with 1 single stitch and then put the stitch marker back. This marks the beginning of the fourth row. So that's 1 single stitch. And now in the next stitch we are going to make a increase. That's 2 single stitches worked into the same stitch. That's an increase. And now in the next stitch, make 1 single stitch. So the pattern is 1 stitch, increase and 1 stitch as 1 set, and we are going to repeat it throughout the row for 5 more times, which makes a total of 6 repetitions. So that's 1 stitch, this is a single stitch increase and again 1 stitch. This completes the second repetition. Likewise, continue until you reach the starting point. Here I am making the last single stitch of 4th row, and by the end of the 4th row you will have 24 single stitches. Check for the count if you are a beginner. Now remove the stitch marker and let's start making the 5th row. Begin with 1 single stitch, put the stitch marker back to mark the beginning of the 5th row. And for the 5th row, the pattern is 3 single stitch and 1 increase. So as we have already done 1 single stitch, make 2 single stitches more, which makes a total of 3 single stitches, and in the next stitch make 1 increase. So that's 3 single stitch and 1 increase, and repeat this pattern for 5 more times in the row. So that's the second single stitch, third one, that's 3 single stitches. In the next stitch, make an increase. That's 2 single stitches worked into the same stitch. That's the second repetition. Likewise, Repeat it until the starting point. Now I'm making the last increase of the 5th row, and by the end of this increase we will have 30 single stitches. And if you see, it's almost flat but not completely flat. This is the shape you will get. Now remove the stitch marker and let's start making the 6th row. Make one single stitch and then put the stitch marker back. The pattern for the 6th row is 2 single stitches, increase and 2 single stitches. So that's 2 single stitches. Now make an increase in the next stitch. So that's an increase. Now make 2 single stitches. So that's the first repetition. 2 single stitch, increase and 2 single stitch. And repeat it throughout the row for 5 more times. And that completes the 6th row with 36 single stitches. Here I have completed the last repetition. Now remove the stitch marker. And let's start making the 7th row. Begin with one single stitch and then put the stitch marker into this stitch to mark the beginning of the 7th row. For 7th row, the pattern is 5 single stitch and an increase. So continue. That's 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's 5 single stitches. And now we have to make one increase in the next stitch. So increase means 2 single stitches worked in the same stitch. Now this is the set of stitches. We have to repeat it throughout the row until you reach the starting point. And by the end of the 7th row, you will have 42 single stitches. Make sure you are getting the exact count as mentioned in the pattern, so that you will get the exact shape of the project. Now remove the stitch marker. Begin with one single stitch and put the stitch marker back to mark the beginning of the 8th row. Now from row 8 to row 11, we have to make one single stitch in each and every stitch. As we are not making any increases, the count will remain the same, which means in row 7, we have 42 stitches. So from row 8 to row 11, in each row, as we are not making any increases, we still have the same 42 stitches. And by the end of the 11th row, this is how the shape of your project should look like. Now let's continue. Observe the pattern carefully from here on. It's more detailed. So remove the stitch marker, make one single stitch and put the stitch marker back. Now we are going to begin the 12th row. We'll have 11 single stitches. So that's one single stitch, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and 11. So this makes the starting part for the 12th row. Now we are going to make one single stitch, and in the next stitch we'll make one increase. That's 2 single stitches in the same stitch. So one stitch and one increase. This pattern we have to repeat for 4 times. So let's continue. One stitch and one increase. That's the second repetition. One single stitch and one increase. That's the third repetition. One single stitch and one increase. That's the fourth repetition. Now the front nose part of the project, make 4 single stitches. That's 2, 3 and 4. That's the middle part. So here I am going to put a little stitch markers to identify the 4 normal stitches in between the increases. So for that I am just using a pearl head pins. If you want, you can just put a piece of yarn or any kind of small identification to identify where you have done those flat 4 single stitches. The above row is where we will put the eyes onto the project. Okay, so for that reason we will put a stitch markers in that middle 4 stitches. Now let's continue the left cheek part. This will give you a nice cheeks to your project. So we'll begin with an increase. That's 2 single stitches in the same stitch. And in the next stitch, make 1 single stitch. And now we are going to repeat this pattern of increase and 1 stitch for 4 repetition. This is the second repetition. That's an increase and one single stitch. That's the third repetition. And now we are doing the fourth one, increase and one single stitch. That's the fourth repetition. And now you will be left with 11 stitches. So let's continue. This is the second single stitch. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and 11. Now you can stop your work here and let's see where to put the eyes to your project. First, identify the 4 stitches where we have done the center part in between the left and right cheeks. Now, above that line, identify the 1 stitch next to each pearl head pin, that is in between the 6 stitches. So, this is where we have to put the eye. So, first pearl head pin, go to the row previously and move 1 stitch away from the center and put your left eye there. Again, in the same way, identify the first pearl head pin, go to the previous row and 1 stitch away from the center, and that is where you will put the second eye. So make sure that both the eyes are separated with the 6 stitches in between, and this will be in the row 10 and row 11 with 6 stitches apart from the center 4 stitches where we have done it in the 12th row. So once you have fixed both the eyes, you can remove the pearl head pins, and from there you can fix the backside part of the eyes by putting the washers behind it. And you can always embroider the eyes at the same positions if you are not interested or you wanted to avoid safety eyes. Now let's continue with the pattern. Let's go back to the place where we have left. Now let's start making the 13th row. Remove the stitch marker, adjust the yarn, adjust the loop and begin with 1 single stitch and then put the stitch marker back. Now from row 13 to row 15, we'll make 1 single stitch in each and every stitch. So this is an easy part. We're just going to make 1 single stitch in each stitch. There is no increase. So the count will remain the same, the 50 stitches in the previous row, and now there will be 50 more stitches in row 13 and until row 15. And this is how the head shape turns out. It might look weird at this point, but once we complete the project, it will look so cute. Now let's continue. Take out the stitch marker and let's start making row 16. Begin with 1 single stitch and put the stitch marker back. Again, this row has to be done slowly, observing the pattern. Begin with 11 single stitches. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So that's the starting part. Now the right cheek for the project, 1 single stitch and then 1 decrease. So here we are making an invisible decrease. So insert the hook into the front loop of first stitch and then into the front loop of next stitch. Drop a loop and make a single stitch. So that's a decrease, invisible decrease, and repeat this for 4 times. This is the second repetition. So 1 single stitch. Again insert the hook into the front loop of next 2 stitches at a time. Drop a loop and make a decrease. That's the second repetition. Then the third repetition, 1 single stitch and 1 decrease. So that's the third repetition. 1 single stitch and 1 decrease. This is the fourth repetition. So if you see, this will give you a nice right cheeks part for the dolls. Now for the flat part in the middle, make 4 single crochet stitches. That's 1, 2, 3 and 4. So in these 4 stitches is where we are going to embroider the mouth for the project. Now let's start making the left cheek for the doll. Begin with a decrease and then 1 single stitch. Again 1 decrease and 1 single stitch. So this is the second repetition. 1 decrease and 1 single stitch. That's the third repetition. And 1 decrease. I'm just cross checking the number of repetitions here as I lost the count. And now here I'm making the fourth repetition. 1 decrease and 1 single stitch. So that's the fourth repetition. Now you'll have 11 more single stitches. So let's continue. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and 11. And by the end of this row you will have 42 single stitches. So it's important while working in amigurumis to make sure that you are following the exact pattern, and even a slightest change in the position of increases will change the shape of your project. So it's important, and make sure that you are following the pattern perfectly as given. Now remove the stitch marker and let's start make row 17. Let's begin by making 1 single stitch and put the stitch marker back to mark the beginning of the 17th row. So that's first single stitch. We'll make 5 single stitches. This is the second one. 3, 4 and 5. Once 5 single stitches are completed, let's make a decrease. So again, into the front loops of the next 2 stitches, take the yarn, come out of the front loops. Oops. Yes, drop the loop from both the front loops at a time. Yarn over and complete a decrease. So 5 single stitch and 1 decrease, and repeat it throughout the row until the starting point. So here I am working the last decrease of the 17th row, and by the end of the 17th row we will have 36 single stitches. So 5 single stitch and decrease have to be repeated for 6 times. Remove the stitch marker and let's start making the 18th row. Begin with 1 single stitch, put the stitch marker back to mark the beginning of the 18th row. So make 1 more single stitch in the next stitch. So that's 2 single stitches, and now we make a decrease. Insert the needle into both the front loops at a time and then a decrease, and make 2 more single stitches. So that's the first repetition, like 2 single stitches, decrease and 2 single stitches. Now repeat this pattern 5 more times until you reach the starting point. So here making the last single stitch, and by the end of this row you will have 30 single stitches. Now we are about to complete, and if you see the shape, it's looking cute. Remove the stitch marker and let's start making the 19th row. Begin with 1 single stitch, put the stitch marker back, and this marks the beginning of the 19th row. And for this row we have to make 3 single stitches and 1 decrease. So we have already done the first one, 2 and 3. That's 3 single stitches, and now make a decrease. Insert the hook into front loops, drop a loop and make a single stitch. So 3 single stitches and decrease. Repeat this for 5 more times in the entire row, which makes a total of 6 repetitions. And by the end of this row you will have 24 single stitches. Continue this until the starting point. So we have 2 more stitches left. Make the last decrease in these 2. This completes the 19th row. Remove the stitch marker and let's start making the 20th row. Begin with 1 single stitch. Put the stitch marker in that stitch to mark the beginning of the 20th row, and now make a decrease. And then in the next stitch, make one single stitch. So we have one single stitch, one decrease and one single stitch. And now for this entire row, we are going to repeat this pattern for a total of 6 times. And by the end of the 20th row, you will have 18 single stitches. Now remove the stitch marker. In the next stitch, insert your hook, make a slip stitch, chain 1 and cut the yarn. Leave just 2 to 3 inches of tail end, and we are going to stuff it into the stuffing. We are not going to use this tail end. So this completes the head part, like the crocheting part of the head part. Now we are going to stuff it a little bit. So take a good amount of fiber fill and stuff it into the cheeks, head and every minute corner of the head part from inside, so that all the stitches and all the shape will look nicely defined. Stuff it completely without leaving any gaps. And once the head is completely stuffed, we'll just add a little details onto the head part, like the cheeks or the nose, mouth and everything. So for the cheeks part, I'm going to take this saffron color yarn and begin with a magic ring. Chain 1, and now in the center we are going to make 8 single stitches. So make them little tight and close stitches, as these will become a little blush on the cheeks. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. Now cut the yarn and pull the last thread out of the needle. So this feels incomplete, but let me show you how to complete the project. First, close the magic ring by pulling the starting tail end. Now take the tapestry needle and insert the tail end, the finishing tail end, into the tapestry needle. Now insert the tapestry needle onto the top of first stitch into both the loops. Pull the thread out. Now go back and insert the needle into the back loop and also the back bump of the last single stitch. This finishes the circle with a nice finishings. Now turn your project onto the back side, and now take both the tail ends in both your hands and make them into a knot, so that the threads will be secured on the back side. Make a couple of knots to make sure that they are nicely secured. And once it is done, we can just trim the threads by leaving a very little tail end, because we are just going to attach these circles onto cheeks as a blush by using a fabric glue. Make 2 such circles and put them aside. Now take the same color as you have taken for the base of the project. So here it's for a Dudu doll, so I'm just using the same brown color yarn. So begin with a magic circle. We are going to make a ears and also the tail for the project. So begin with magic ring, chain 1, and in first row we have to make 6 single stitches. So that's the second single stitch, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Once you have all the 6 stitches, pull the starting tail end and close the magic circle. Now for the second row, insert your hook on top of the first stitch and begin with 1 single stitch. And then put the stitch marker on top of this stitch to mark the beginning of the second row. And for the second row, we have to make 1 single stitch and 1 increase, and we have to repeat that 3 times. So let's continue. In the next stitch, I'm going to make a single crochet increase, that is 2 single stitches worked in the same stitch. That's the first repetition, and now we are doing the second repetition. 1 single stitch and 1 single stitch increase, that's 2 single stitches in the same stitch. Again 1 single stitch and 1 increase. This completes the second row with 9 single stitches. And once it is done, make sure the correct side of the project is facing on the outside. Adjust the circle accordingly. Remove the stitch marker and let's start making the third row. Make one single stitch in each and every stitch. So begin with one single stitch, put the stitch marker back to mark the beginning of the third row and continue to make one single stitch in each and every stitch. So for the Dudu doll, we have to make 3 such pieces using the same pattern for both the ears and also the tail. Whereas for the BUBU doll, which is in white color base, we have to make 2 ears in black color yarn, and for the tail use the same color as you are using it for the body. Like BUBU doll, we will do it in white color, so the tail will be in white color yarn. But we will use the same pattern from row 1 to row 3. So once the third row is also completed, make a slip stitch, chain 1 and fasten off, leaving a long tail end. We are going to use this tail end to attach the body parts to the main project. So this completes the first part, like a ear, and we'll make 2 such parts. One for the another ear and another one for the tail. Now put this aside and let's continue with the project. Now let's do the additional detailing part. We'll stitch the mouth. So identify the middle 4 stitches which we have done in row 12, and make a cute little mouth for the project as shown in the video. You can embroider in any expression you like a smiley face or angry pout, anything that suits your dolls. So here I am just making a cute laughing emoji, like a very high laugh which we usually see for our BUBU and DUDU dolls. So it's a wide opened mouth with laughing expressions. So adjust the threads, and once it is done, I'm just going to tie them on the inner side and leave the extra thread into the stuffing part. And now to highlight the tongue part, instead of embroidering with the pink color yarn, I'm just drawing it on the top of the project. And yeah, once you completed the mouth part, check the positions where the ears goes on, like especially we will attach them in between row 4 and row 5, but make sure that ears will come in an exact place. And now I'm going to attach the cheeks in between row 13 and row 15 and on either side of the cheeks. Just make sure you are putting them in proper positions so that you cannot change once the glue is dried. So make sure the positions are correct before you put them on a glue. And now here is a little tip which I use while working on amigurumis. Before attaching the ears with the tapestry needle and yarn, just glue them in their positions. So once if it is dried out completely, you can then pull out the needles and then use the tapestry needle to attach the ear to the base. So this way the position of the ears will stay in place and you will not miss any alignment with the body parts. So this could be really helpful. If it is, you can make sure you can follow the same tip. If it's not, you can follow whatever regularly you are doing it right now. Okay, so this way I'm going to attach both the ears using the excess thread that I have left while working the ears. And after attaching both the ears, the head part is completed. Now put that aside and let's continue with the rest of the pattern. We are going to work hands and we have to make 2 such pieces. So for making hands, begin with a magic ring and make chain 1. Now in the center, make 6 single crochet stitches. So that's the first single stitch, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Once the 6 stitches are completed, pull the starting tail end tightly to close the magic circle. Now for the second row, insert the hook on top of the first stitch and make a single crochet. Now put a stitch marker on top of this stitch to mark the beginning of the second row. Now for the second row, we are going to make one single stitch and one increase as a pattern. So as we have already completed one single stitch, in the next stitch we are going to make a single crochet increase. That is 1 and 2. So that's the first repetition, one single stitch and one increase. Now the second repetition, one single stitch, and in the next stitch, one increase. Now for the third repetition, make it one more time, one single stitch and one increase. So that's one single stitch, and in the next stitch, one increase. That's the third repetition. So you will have 9 single stitches at the end of the second row. Adjust this shape so that the stitches correct side will be on the outside. Now for the third row, make one single stitch in each and every stitch throughout the row, and we are going to repeat the same thing for the next 2 rows as well. That is until row 6. So from row 3 to row 6, we are going to work only one single stitch in each and every stitch until you complete the 6th row. So in all these 4 rows, you will have 9 stitches in each row. So let's continue. Make one single stitch in each and every stitch. After completing 6 rows, your hand will look something like this. Your project hand. Now for the 7th row, begin with one single stitch and then put a stitch marker in that stitch. Now we are going to make a decrease. So insert the hook into the front loops of next 2 stitches. Drop a loop and make a single stitch. And repeat this pattern for 2 more times. So one single stitch. Again one invisible decrease. That's the second repetition. Now we are making the third repetition. One single stitch. And then one invisible decrease. That's the third repetition. So this completes the 7th row and you will have 6 single stitches. Now remove the stitch marker and in the next stitch make a slip stitch. Then make chain 1 and then trim the excess thread, leaving a small tail end. Fasten off and make a knot. Now take a very little amount of fiber fill, just enough to hold the shape of the hand. This completes the first hand. Repeat the same pattern and make another hand as well. Now put these 2 aside and let's start making the legs for the project. For this, again begin with a magic circle and now make chain 1. Now in the center, we'll make 6 single crochet stitches. That's one single stitch, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Now pull the starting tail end and close the magic circle. So for the first 2 lines of this project, we are going to close the rows by making a slip stitch. So insert the needle onto the top of the first stitch and then make a slip stitch. This completes the first row with 6 single stitches. Now chain 1 and let's start making the second row. On top of the first single stitch, insert your needle and make a single crochet increase. That's 2 single stitches worked into the same stitch. Now in the next 5 stitches also, we are going to make one single stitch increase in each and every stitch. That's the second single stitch increase. And then the third single stitch increase, and you will have 3 more stitches remaining. You're going to make an increase stitches in all those 3 stitches as well. Now if you see, you will have 12 single stitches by the end of the row. Now make a slip stitch and connect the second row as well. Now make chain 1 and then let's start making the third row. Insert your needle only into the back loop of the single stitch and then make one single stitch for the third row. And for the entire row, we are going to make one single stitch in each and every stitch, but make sure you use only the back loops. We will be leaving the front loops intact. So this will create a line like structure with for the first two lines and the rest of the pattern. See the line which gives the shape or the structure, like the difference in between the feet and the leg. Likewise, continue to make one single stitch in each and every stitch until the starting row. The starting stitch, and you will have 12 single stitches in your third row. Now for the fourth row, we are continuing to make a spiral method, like we are not making any more slip stitches. So for the fourth row, remove the stitch marker and start making one single stitch in each and every stitch. And now we are going to repeat this pattern from row 4 to row 7. Like the next 3 rows, we are going to make one single stitch in each and every stitch. So this will give you the first leg. So after completing 7 rows, this is how the first leg looks like. Now follow the same pattern from row 1 to row 7, and in the next stitch we have made a slip stitch and we have fastened off for the first half of the leg. Now we are going to attach both the first and the second legs together. So for that, do not remove the stitch marker from the first leg. Okay, then make chain 3. Just look at the stitches carefully while you are attaching the legs. Now insert your needle into the stitch where you have done the slip stitch before you fasten off in your previous leg. Now make one single stitch. So this single stitch is the start of the 8th row. That is the body part which we are making it. Okay, I've just put a stitch marker in the 8th row, like the first stitch of the 8th row. Now continue to make one single stitch in each and every stitch on the second leg, the left leg. Just one, we can put a count like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. Once all the 12 single stitches are completed, we are going to work across the chain, but do not trim out or fasten off the finishing thread of the first leg, because that thread we are going to use it to attach the gap in between the legs. Now across the chain, identify the back bumps, and into these back bumps only we are going to make one single stitch in each chain. So that's the first single stitch on the third chain. Then another single stitch, insert the needle only into the back loop of the chain to make the second single stitch, and the third single stitch onto the third chain of the chain 3. So that and you can pull it to make the legs look closer to each other. Now identify the stitch marker where we have kept the starting stitch of the 7th row. Now remove that stitch marker and let's continue to make one single stitch in each stitch for the second leg. So again 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, this is the 10th one, 11 and 12. Now we have come to the place where we have done the chain 3, and this chain 3 looks like a braided stitch because we have used the back bumps for making a 3 single stitch on the back side of the chain. So make one single stitch in each of these 3 chains. As I have done the chain stitches very close and tight to each other, it's getting a little harder for me to insert the needle. But yes, this helps us to get the tighter stitches in between the legs without having any gaps. So try to make your stitches tighter if possible. If not, you can just make it a little looser, and if you find any gaps, you can handle them by attaching with a glue, or making a simple knot with the little piece of thread and all. So here I have made the 3 single stitches on top of all the 3 chains, and if you see, there will be very less gaps in between the legs, and there will only be a very small gap where we have attached the chain with the second leg, and that place we are going to hide that gap using the small thread which we have left as a finishing thread of the first leg. So now remove the stitch marker and let's start making the 9th row. Now let's begin with 1 single stitch in the next stitch, and that's the beginning of the 9th row. So to mark that, put a stitch marker on top of the first stitch. So that's the beginning of the 9th row. Now continue to make 1 single stitch in each and every stitch throughout the row. So in the previous row, as we have done 12 single stitches on top of each leg, and there are another 6 stitches at the middle part, like on top of chain 3. So you will have 30 stitches. So in row 9 and also in row 10, you will have 30 stitches in each row. As we have not done any increases, the count will remain the same. Now for the 11th row, begin with 1 single stitch and then put the stitch marker back. Now for this row, the pattern is 2 single stitch, increase, and 2 single stitch. So that's 2 single stitch. Now in the next stitch, let's make 1 increase. That's 2 single stitches worked into the same stitch. Now followed by 2 more single stitches. So that's 1 single stitch in the next one and 1 more single stitch in the later one. So 2 stitch, increase, and 2 stitch. And continue this pattern until the starting point. So by the end of this row, you will have 36 single stitches. Now remove the stitch marker and let's start making 12th row. Begin with 1 single stitch and put the stitch marker back. Now from row 12 to row 14, continue to make 1 single stitch on top of each and every stitch. So for row 12, 13 and 14, you will have 36 single stitches in each row. Just continue to make 1 single stitch in each stitch. Don't make any increases. Now by the end of the 14th row, this is how your project looks. Stop it here and let's attach the small gap that you are seeing in between the legs. So for this part, I am going to use the finishing tail end that I have while completing one of the legs. So pull the thread out and using the tapestry needle, let's attach the gap. I'm just not using any kind of techniques, it's just sewing it together and to hide the gap in between. So insert into a couple of stitches nearby and secure it by making a simple knot, and that's it. You can just leave the excess thread into the project as a part of stuffing. You don't have to weave in. And to be secured, I'm just making 1 more knot and then leave it into the leg. So the gap is completely closed now. Okay, now let's continue with the 15th row. Remove the stitch marker, adjust the loop on the hook, and let's start making row 15. Begin with 1 single stitch and then put a stitch marker to mark the beginning of the 15th row. So that's 1 single stitch, and for row 15 we have to make 2 single stitch. So make 1 more 2 single stitch in the next one. So that's 2 single stitch, and then we have to make a decrease. Insert the hook into the front loop of first one and into the second one at the same time. Drop a loop and make a decrease. And now in the next 2 stitches, make 1 single stitch in each. So that's 2 single stitches. Now we are going to repeat this pattern of 2 single stitch, decrease, and 2 single stitch throughout the row for 6 repetitions or until you reach the starting point. And by the end of the 15th row, you will have 30 single stitches. So this is how you will get that little hip shape for the project. Now for the 16th row, make one single stitch in each and every stitch. So the drill remains the same. Remove the stitch marker, make one single stitch, and then continue to make one single stitch in each and every stitch throughout the row until you reach the starting point. And the count will remain the same as like in the previous row. So in row 15, as we have 30 single stitches, in row 16 also we will have 30 single stitches. Now remove the stitch marker and let's start making the 17th row. Begin with one single stitch and then put the stitch marker back. And now for the 17th row, we have to make 3 single stitches. As we have already completed the first single stitch, that's the second one, and this is the third one. So 3 single stitch, and in the next 2 stitches, make a decrease. So insert the needle into front loops of next 2 stitches and a decrease. Now we are going to repeat this pattern throughout the row until you reach the starting point. Here I am making the last invisible decrease of the 17th row, and you will have 24 single stitches. Now let's start making 18th row. Remove the stitch marker. Begin with one single stitch and then put the stitch marker back. Now for the 18th row, make one single stitch in each and every stitch throughout the row until you reach the starting point. So just like in row 17, in row 18 also you will have 24 single crochet stitches. Now stop your work here and let's add the stuffing into the project. Take a good amount of fiber fill and stuff the entire project firmly. First stuff the legs and then add stuffing into the body, and make sure you stuff it firmly so that it holds a good shape. Once the stuffing is completed, remove the stitch marker and let's continue to make a 19th row. So for this, we are going to begin with one single stitch and then make one invisible decrease in the next 2 stitches. So insert the needle into the front loops of next 2 stitches, drop a loop and make a single stitch. So remember, like once we have added the stuffing into the project, it gets a little bit difficult for us to continue with the pattern. And in the next stitch, make one single stitch. So the pattern is one stitch, decrease and one stitch. And now we are going to repeat that pattern throughout the row. So that's one single stitch, one decrease and one single stitch. So while you are working the rows after making the stuffing, make sure that you press down the stuffing so that the stuff doesn't get into the stitches. And once this row is completed, you will have 18 single stitches by the end of the 19th row. Now remove the stitch marker and let's start making the 20th row, and here is where we are going to attach the hands to the project. So carefully watch it and continue the project. Begin with one single stitch and then put the stitch marker in the first stitch. So that's one. Next make 2 single stitches, 2 more single stitches, which means we'll have a total of 3 single stitches. So that's 2 and 3. We have a stitch marker on top of the first single stitch. So this becomes the center part. So once 3 stitches are completed, in the next 3 stitches we are going to attach the hand. So in hand we have total of 6 single stitches. So whatever tail end we have for the hand, just insert and stuff that tail end into the project so that you can clearly see the stitches. So now identify 2 stitches, one next to opposite one. So the first stitch where we have done the slip stitch, and the last single stitch, that is the 6th single stitch where we have done the single stitch, like the last stitch of the last row. So now we are going to insert the needle in both the single stitches and then the next 2 and the last 2 as a pair. So into the first and the last single stitches of the hand. So carefully insert the needle. Now hold them on the hook and now insert the needle into the next single stitch of the body. So now you will have many loops, like you see 3 stitches on the hook, yarn over and draw the yarn out of all the 3 stitches at the same time but make sure you do this step really very careful. Pull the thread out of all the 3 stitches, and then you will have 2 loops on the hook. Continue to make a normal single crochet. So that's 1 single stitch. And now insert the needle into the 2nd and the 5th single stitch of the hand, and then into the next single stitch of the body. Take the yarn and come out of all the 3 stitches and make 1 single stitch. So that's the 2nd single stitch for the hand, attaching the hand. Now into the 3rd single stitch and 4th single stitch of the hand. And now into the next stitch of the body, pull up a loop and make the 3rd single stitch. So in these 3 stitches we have attached the first hand of the body. Now turn the project, make 6 single stitches, the normal usual single stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now just like how we have attached the first hand, we are going to attach the second hand also. So take the 2nd hand, again push that the closing tail end into the stuffing part. Again I'm using the tweezers, and then identify the stitches of the 6th and the first one, which is the difficult part. Once you have identified the 1st and 6th stitches, the remaining 4 stitches will fall in place. So insert it into the 6th stitch, and then identify the into the 1st stitch and then into the 6th stitch. So carefully twist your needle so that you will be able to insert the needle into the 6th stitch as well. Sorry for the blurry video here. Now put the needle into the next stitch of the body. Now you have 3 stitches on the hook. Take the yarn and come out of all the 3 stitches, and then make 1 single stitch. So that's the first single stitch for the body, for the hand, attaching the hand. Now insert the needle into the 2nd and 5th stitches of the hand and into the next stitch of the body. Pull up the loop and make the 2nd single stitch. And now into the 3rd and 4th single stitches of the hand. Yes, I know this is a little bit difficult part, but once you understand the concept of attaching it, you will figure out how to make it easy way. Now make the last single stitch. So we have attached both the hands on either side of the body. Now you will be left with 3 more single stitches. So continue to make the last 3 stitches of the 20th row, and by the end of this row you will have 18 single stitches. And once it is done, you can remove the stitch marker, make a slip stitch, chain 1, and then fasten off, leaving a really long tail end. And this tail end is which one we are going to use to attach to the head of the project. Fasten off to make a knot. So this completes the body part of the project, and if you feel the need to add a little bit of more stuffing, you can still add it. Now onto the back side of the body, we are going to attach the tail piece, the tail which we have already crocheted along with the ears. So identify which side of the body is looking cute and correct for you. Put that as the front side of the body, and on the opposite side you can attach the tail. Identify the middle stitches in between row 10 and 13 and place the tail on the back side of the project. Now to fix the position, I am just using a pearl head pin. If you want, you can just let glue and attach it, and once it is dried you can attach. But for the tail, the light deviation of the position doesn't matter much, so I'm just directly attaching the tail to the body. And once the tail end is attached, I have just weaved in the tail end into the stuffing and then trim the excess thread. So here the tail is now attached. And then comes the main part of attaching the body with its head. As we have already completed the head, and now let's go back and finish the project. So now you have to first align the body with the face. So make sure that it facing the correct side. Even a slightest deviation in the alignment makes the head looks wonky, or it makes it look like the head is looking somewhere else and the body is facing somewhere else. So it's very important to identify where you are putting the head. So now I'm taking a tapestry needle and take the finishing tail end from the body into the tapestry needle. The finishing tail end of the head, I have stuffed it into the body, into the stuffing. Now once you are confirmed like whether it is getting into the middle or not, identify at which stage you have to start combining. And into that stage, insert your tail end into the front loop of the last row and pull out the yarn. And now insert the needle from top to bottom into the next stitch, again only into the front loop of the next stitch, and pull down the yarn. So that's the first join. Now insert the needle from top to bottom in the bottom stitch. And then from bottom to top and from the body part and the next stitch of the face. And then in the next stitch from top to bottom. So once it is top to bottom and another time it is bottom to top. So like that you have to weave in, and then for every couple of stitches you just pull the tail end so that these two parts will come close to each other. You just need to pull it strong enough so that there won't be any gap in between the stitches. So likewise use the same method and continue to join both the head and the body. Once the thread is completely weaved in with all the stitches, pull the thread tightly so that you won't be seeing any gaps in between the head and the neck. You can stretch it a little bit and confirm that there are no gaps, and then only you can finish off the project. So before you finish off, once you tightly pull the tail end, bring the needle to the back side of the project, the back side of the neck of the project, and then again tightly pull the yarn. Now into the next stitch or any of the stitch near the neck, make a couple of knots to secure the thread. And once it is done, push the excess thread into the stuffing and then weave in the thread, and then you can just trim the excess thread close to the project. And with that, you have completed making Dudu doll. Use the same pattern with white and black colors for making BUBU doll, and that makes your own couple dolls. I hope you all enjoyed watching this tutorial. Do give this pattern a try and let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. The written pattern is given in the description. Do check it out. Don't forget to share your work to me on Instagram. See you all in the next video. Thank you for watching. Please like the video, share it and subscribe to DIYKraftZ.